has allowed me to make them look and sound consistent.
The Lord of the Rings, I thought that part of my life had gone and was past.
Peter Jackson just confirmed something that Tolkien fans have been waiting decades to hear. Warner Brothers and his team are actively in negotiations with the Tolkien's estate about licensing rights to additional Tolkien works, including material that has never been touched by any film adaptation. We're potentially talking about the Silmarillion, the unfinished tales, the full deep history of Middle-earth on the big screen. And that's just one of the massive reveals from this week's press cycle. Andy Serkis opened up about the creative direction of Hunt for Gollum. The Aragorn casting decision just got major context, and there is a real chance Viggo Mortensen shows up in this film in a way nobody is talking about yet. Stay until the end, because the full picture here is significantly bigger than what most people have caught. If you're a Lord of the Rings fan, a Tolkien fan, or just someone who follows Hollywood's biggest franchise moves, subscribe right now and hit the bell. Now let's get into all of it. Let's start with a question that has been circulating since Hunt for Gollum was first officially announced. Why did Peter Jackson, the man who built the entire cinematic Lord of the Rings universe from the ground up, hand the directing chair to Andy Serkis instead of sitting in it himself? Jackson finally addressed this directly during the Cannes press tour, and his answer is worth taking seriously. His explanation was essentially this: Andy Serkis already lives inside the head of Gollum more deeply than any other person on Earth ever could. Serkis has spent decades playing this character, understanding his psychology, his physicality, his speech patterns, his trauma, the full interior life of Smeagol. From Jackson's perspective, having any other director try to interpret Gollum at this point in the franchise would be a step backwards. Serkis isn't just an actor reprising a role. He is the world's foremost authority on who this character actually is. And Jackson made something else explicitly clear. This is not him walking away from Middle-earth. He remains deeply involved as a producer on the project, working alongside Fran Walsh and Philippa Boyens, the same writing partnership that scripted the original trilogy. The creative DNA that made those films what they are is still present and intact behind the scenes. What Jackson is saying, in effect, is that handing Serkis the director's chair is the right call, because this is Serkis's character and his moment. Some performances become so completely identified with a single actor that the actor genuinely understands the character better than anyone else is alive. Gollum is one of those cases. Let him make the definitive version of this story. That's a reasonable and confident creative decision, not a retreat. Now here is where things get genuinely historic, and where casual fans may have missed the most important development of the entire week. Peter Jackson confirmed that Warner Brothers and his team are actively in negotiations with the younger Tolkien estate members about licensing rights to additional Tolkien works. His exact framing was that the combination of WB and his team have been talking to the younger Tolkien members about the possibility of actually licensing the rights for decades. The rights situation around Tolkien's works has been one of the most complicated and carefully guarded arrangements in all of entertainment. Warner Brothers has held the Lord of the Rings and Hobbit film rights. That much is established. But the deeper material, the Silmarillion, the unfinished tales, the broader history of Middle-earth that Tolkien spent his entire life building, those rights have always been entirely separate and far more protected. The Tolkien estate has historically been extremely careful about what gets adapted and how, which is part of why Amazon's Rings of Power had to operate under such significant creative constraints in what it could and couldn't draw from. If Warner Brothers and Peter Jackson are now in active, ongoing talks with the Tolkien estate about expanding that license, the ceiling for what this cinematic universe can become just changed dramatically. The War of Angmar, the Silmarillion, the full history of the First Age, the creation of Middle-earth, the wars that shaped everything that happens in Lord of the Rings. That material, adapted correctly, with the right team, is not just one or two more films. That is a decade plus of storytelling that has never been touched on screen. The critical qualifier here, and it cannot be overstated, is that it has to be done right. The Rings of Power exists as a direct demonstration of what happens when Middle-earth is adapted without the full Tolkien estate blessing and without Peter Jackson's team in the room. There are things it gets right, But there are obvious problems that stem directly from the constraints it was forced to operate under. If WB secures full rights with Jackson, Walsh, and Boyens at the creative helm, the gap between what Rings of Power is and what a properly resourced Middle-earth production can be becomes very clear very fast. Back to Hunt for Gollum specifically, because Serkis's stated creative commitment is the part of this story that has genuine reasons for optimism. Serkis has officially confirmed that Hunt for Gollum is being made exactly the way the original Lord of the Rings trilogy was made. Same tone, same atmosphere, same practical filmmaking philosophy. His direct framing, the movie is absolutely going to feel like Lord of the Rings, not a modern reimagining, not a stylistically different prequel that borrows the name and the iconography while abandoning what made it work. That is a significant creative commitment to make publicly and repeatedly. It tells you exactly where Serkis's head is on this project. He is not trying to put his own stylistic stamp on Middle-earth in a way that drifts from what audiences know. He is trying to make something that slots directly into the existing trilogy as a genuine companion piece. The writing team reinforces this completely. Fran Walsh and Philippa Boyens are writing the script. These are the people who shaped the original identity of Middle-earth on screen in the first place, who understood how to translate Tolkien's language and emotional register into something that works cinematically without losing what makes the source material sacred to its fans. Their presence on the screenplay is not a small detail. It is the strongest possible structural guarantee that this film's foundation is being built by people who have done this before and done it at the highest level. Peter Jackson producing, Fran Walsh and Philippa Boyens writing, Andy Serkis directing and reprising Gollum. The entire creative backbone of the original trilogy is essentially reassembled for this project. That is not nothing. We still need to get into the Aragorn casting, why Viggo Mortensen's involvement may be bigger than anyone has reported, the production timeline, the trailer window, and the release date collision that could be a serious problem for this film. Stay with me and subscribe if you're not already here. Let's keep going. Jamie Dornan has officially been cast as the young Aragorn in Hunt for Gollum. And Serkis has now provided the context that makes this casting decision considerably more defensible than it might initially seem. The first important detail, in this film, the character will not be called Aragorn. He will be referred to as Strider, the name he operated under as a ranger, before fully embracing his identity as the heir to Gondor's throne. That is a deliberate and smart, creative choice because it immediately signals to the audience that this is not a replacement for Viggo Mortensen. This is a different chapter of the same character's life. We are meeting this person before the events of Fellowship of the Ring, when he was still wandering Middle-earth without fully committing to what his destiny required of him. Serkis's framing of the Dornan casting is worth understanding precisely. He is not asking Dornan to replicate what Viggo built across 3 films. He is asking Dornan to play a version of the character that Viggo never had the opportunity to fully explore, because the original trilogy picks up much further along in Aragorn's journey, when much of the internal conflict of his earlier years was already behind him. There is legitimate creative territory here that has never been explored on screen. That's the space Dornan is being asked to inhabit. But the single most reassuring element of the entire casting story is this: Viggo Mortensen has reportedly given the production his complete approval. Serkis confirmed that Viggo is, in his words, thrilled about the direction the film is taking and has given it a full seal of approval. The original Aragorn endorsing the creative direction of this film is a meaningful signal. It means Viggo has seen enough, the script, the vision, the approach, to feel confident that what Serkis and the team are building respects what he brought to that character. That's not a courtesy statement. That's a substantive endorsement from someone with more investment in getting this right than almost anyone, and it opens a genuinely interesting door. If Viggo has seen the material and is this enthusiastic, there is a real possibility he appears in the film in some capacity, a framing device, a narrative thread, perhaps even a voice performance that bridges this story to the trilogy that follows. Nothing has been confirmed, But the enthusiasm combined with the level of access he apparently has to the production makes it a scenario worth considering seriously. On the production side, Serkis has confirmed that Hunt for Gollum is in the final stretch of pre-production, with principal photography beginning very soon. Warner Bros. Has consistently held the December 2027 release date. And with filming starting now, that window provides sufficient time for the practical effects work and the extensive visual effects polish that a Middle-earth production demands, provided the schedule holds. On the trailer question, don't expect anything soon. With principal photography just beginning, there is essentially no finished footage to show. Studios do not drop teasers before they have meaningful edited material, and right now, that material simply does not exist yet. The realistic window for the first teaser is mid-2027 at the earliest. A CinemaCon 2027 presentation or a major Comic-Con reveal would not be surprising. Those events are designed precisely for this kind of high-anticipation franchise reveal. But anyone expecting marketing material in 2026 is going to be waiting a long time. Here is the concern that deserves honest discussion. Hunt for Gollum is currently targeting a December 2027 release. So is Avengers: Secret Wars. Both films are enormous tentpoles. Both have massive built-in fan bases hungry for a return to form after difficult years for their respective franchises. Both will be competing for the same premium IMAX screens during the same holiday corridor, and Avengers. Secret Wars is confirmed for an IMAX release. The IMAX screen competition alone is a legitimate strategic problem. When two films of this scale fight for premium screens in the same window, one tends to dominate and one tends to underperform relative to its potential, not because it's a worse film, but because the economics of screen allocation work against both of them, splitting the same audience. Hunt for Gollum is a significant film with a passionate global fan base. But in a direct collision with a post-Endgame Avengers event that Marvel has been building toward for years, the box office math becomes considerably more complicated. One of these films needs to move. Whether WB or Marvel blinks first remains to be seen. The picture emerging from this week's Hunt for Gollum press cycle is more substantive than most people have processed. Andy Serkis directing and reprising Gollum. Fran Walsh and Philippa Boyens writing. Peter Jackson producing. Jamie Dornan playing Strider with Viggo Mortensen's explicit blessing and possible involvement. And above all, active negotiations with the Tolkien estate that could open up the Silmarillion and the full deep history of Middle-earth for the first time ever. Cautious optimism is the right position. Lightning in a bottle is genuinely hard to catch twice, but the structural decisions being made on this production are the right ones. The right people are in the room. The creative commitment is pointed in the right direction. December 2027. Mark it. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Are you convinced by the Dornan casting? Do you think WB secures the Tolkien estate rights? And do you want Viggo in this film? Hit the like button if this breakdown delivered. Subscribe for every major update on Hunt for Gollum and everything else worth following in Hollywood. Until next time, we'll see you on the other side.